Like it or not, but Wooting's HE keyboards are still the ones to beat. Sure, we've been seeing lots of quote-unquote Wooting killers recently, and you know, some have been really good, especially in the budget segment. You can find some great HE keyboards that can do a lot of what a Wooting can, but for a lot less money. But I've yet to see a keyboard that's just as refined as something like the Wooting 80HE. Something is always missing. Either the performance just isn't there, or the keyboard is missing important features like SOCD or a proper rapid trigger implementation. And the final boss really is the software. Wooting's utility has been in a league of its own. But you know, I have some really promising keyboards here. They're not your typical budget alternatives that are trying to undercut Wooting. That's really not what these are. Take this one for example, the iQnix EZ80. This is a $300 keyboard. They're not trying to be the cheap option anymore. These keyboards want to go head-to-head with Wooting. And all three keyboards have web-based software, great build quality, and support for stuff like SOCD. And let me tell you, they don't hold back with performance claims either. On the websites you find numbers like 0.18 milliseconds of latency, 0.01mm sensitivity, or even down to 0.005mm rapid trigger precision. And they're pretty much charging Wooting money, so they better deliver on those claims.
This video is sponsored by Abacus AI.
Back to you, Techless.
You guessed it, I made this clip using AI. ChatLLM to be more specific. ChatLLM Teams is a service that combines multiple LLMs and AI tools into just one single platform. It gives you access to the most popular LLMs like OpenAI's GPT 4.1, O3, Gemini, Claude, DeepSeek, you name it. ChatLLM even has dedicated sections for image and video generation. Also, there's a humanize feature which improves AI-generated text to make it sound more human. And they also have Deep Agent, which is an extremely powerful tool that can create websites, apps, presentations, detailed reports, and much more. The cool thing about ChatLLM is that if you're not happy with the results you're getting from one AI model, you can just switch to a different model on the fly. Every LLM has different strengths and weaknesses, so you often need separate subscriptions to get the best results, which can get a bit expensive.
Oh, which AI subscriptions I have? I have all of them.
ChatLLM starts at $10 a month, which is typically cheaper than having individual subscriptions to multiple services. Visit chatllm.abacus.ai or check out the link in the video description to learn more about ChatLLM.
Back to you, Techless.
So yeah, are these performance claims just marketing BS, or are these keyboards actually this good? Let's check the latency first. We know that the Wooting 80HE is fast, so as you would expect it comes in with a sub 1 millisecond latency result. These are fresh numbers by the way with the newest firmware versions installed. And the iQnix EZ80? Well, I don't want to call 1.5 milliseconds of latency a disappointing result. It's still very, very fast. But you know, it's far from the claimed 0.18 millisecond number. Similar story with Pulse's keyboard. Not a chart-topping result by any means, but it's probably more than fast enough for any real-world scenario. The Mate 68 Ultra, though, managed to outperform the 80HE. Only by the slightest margin, yes, but that's what you want to see from a high-end keyboard. Now look, I'm not gonna sit here and claim that I can feel the latency difference between any of these keyboards. I really can't. Each of these keyboards is fast enough for me. But you know, that's besides the point. When you're spending something like $200, $300 or more on a gaming keyboard, you just want to know that it's performing at the highest level. Same is true for the accuracy and precision. It's highly debatable if anyone needs like a 0.1mm rapid trigger sensitivity, and we can discuss all day long how accurate or precise a gaming keyboard really needs to be. But at the end of the day, if you're positioning your keyboard in this price bracket, your keyboard should perform at least as good as the Wooting 80HE. And you know, iQnix in particular makes some crazy claims. 0.005mm rapid trigger sensitivity. I think that's the smallest number I've seen so far. And apparently they're achieving new levels of precision thanks to nothing short of a revolutionary, industry-first Hall effect sensor. Their words, not mine. I mean, typically the real-world numbers are far off the marketing claims, and that's even with more modest claims like 0.1mm actuation or rapid trigger. Just the fact that you can choose a 0.1mm actuation point in the keyboard utility doesn't mean that the key press will actually be detected after just 0.1mm. Take the Pulsar PC MK2 for example. You can choose an actuation point of just 0.1mm, like on virtually any other HE keyboard on the market. The real actuation though only happens at 0.25mm on average. That's still pretty sensitive, and much too sensitive for me to be honest. But then again, it's far from the claimed 0.1mm actuation. And it's not just this keyboard, it's about the same on the Mate 68 Ultra and on the Wooting 80HE. But here's the iQnix EZ80 set to 0.1mm, the keyboard that claims to have revolutionary HE tech. And yeah, it does actuate at just 0.12mm. And it does that over and over again, like clockwork really. Considering that a height gauge and testing methodology have their limits too, we might as well call this a perfect result. So there might actually be something special about their HE tech. But what about that 0.005mm rapid trigger claim? Well, my height gauge doesn't even show this many digits. For some context, that's less than a tenth of the diameter of a human hair. We're talking about 5 micrometers here, which is smaller than the diameter of a red blood cell. So if iQnix claims are even remotely true, rapid trigger should kick in after just the tiniest upwards movement. And it actually does. After just 10 micrometers, the smallest change my height gauge can even detect, rapid trigger kicks in and deactivates the key. And this is highly repeatable. I really did not expect this, to be honest. I've previously only seen this level of sensitivity and precision from TMR sensors and thought this was unachievable for conventional Hall effect sensors. So the EZ80 easily tops the chart here. The Wooting 80HE though is at the bottom of the chart. With a minimum rapid trigger setting of 0.15mm, it has the least sensitive rapid trigger, and the deviation between runs is higher too. So the other brands really caught up here and even surpassed Wooting. But Wooting already told me they're planning to change the minimum rapid trigger setting to 0.1mm as well, and they're also working on an update that's supposed to improve the precision. Which is good, because for now the 80HE is at the bottom of the chart for the overall precision. It's important to keep in mind that we're talking about microscopic differences here, literally. But yeah, real-world benefits or not, you just can't argue with the fact that these keyboards are more precise than the 80HE. Now this is typically the point where we start talking about the software, and this usually is what falls apart for the other keyboards, because typically Wooting's utility is just miles ahead. But honestly, that's not really the case anymore. Don't get me wrong, Wooting's utility still is the best keyboard utility I've seen so far. It's super intuitive to use, it's fast, it's packed with features, and it's virtually bug-free. But man, the other brands really caught up. These keyboards are ticking a lot of boxes that many other Hall effect keyboards are struggling to get right. A true driver-free web utility, working profiles, bug-free SOCD, and proper non-continuous rapid trigger. Keyboards that only support continuous rapid trigger are a hard pass for me. It makes your keys feel unpredictable because it keeps the rapid trigger mode active until you fully let go of a key. Luckily, all 4 of these keyboards here support proper normal rapid trigger. This together with support for SOCD and having the ability to use profiles have become sort of the minimum requirements for me that I expect a good Hall effect keyboard to have. Depending on which games you play, you maybe don't care as much about SOCD, but support for profiles really is mandatory. You don't want to type on a gaming profile that probably has super short actuation points for WASD, maybe some weird keybinds and macros and whatnot. So being able to use separate profiles for typing and for different games is super important. And all these keyboards support profiles. Melgeek's keyboard has 4 profile slots, and Pulsar and iQnix currently have 3. However, there is a big caveat with how iQnix handles profiles. Only the first profile is customizable. The other 2 profiles are locked, which is a bit of a shame. I'm glad that the second profile, the Office profile, is pretty good for typing, but I much prefer to configure it myself. And Wooting still is the king of profiles. You get 4 fully customizable profiles stored on device and a virtually unlimited number of profiles that can be stored in the utility. Plus the way you can organize your profiles by just dragging and dropping them is super convenient. Now the next step from just having profiles is being able to switch between the profiles on the keyboard. It's just a quality of life feature, so you don't need to open up the utility every time you're switching games or just want to type. And each of these keyboards allows you to switch profiles with keyboard shortcuts. Again, the EZ80 is a bit limited here, as 2 of the 3 available profiles are pre-configured, but it's good to see that on-keyboard profile switching is slowly becoming the standard. Now I have mostly good things to say about Melgeek's and Pulse's utilities, but iQnix's utility still leaves a bit to be desired. It's nowhere near as bad anymore as about half a year ago when I tested the EZ63, and I really have to give them props for all the improvements they've made so far, but still, there are a lot of things that could be better or just outright broken. For example, I had configured the page up and page down key to next and previous song, but as you can see, every few days or so it just resets to the default keybinds. Then there's this page where you can configure the actuation and rapid trigger settings. It doesn't look too bad at first glance, but could you tell that I have set an actuation point of 0.4mm for the W key and 2.8mm for the G key? You can't, because you have to select each key individually to see how it's configured. Compare that to Pulse's interface that shows you all the settings at a glance. It's those little things really that can get pretty annoying over time. By the way, Pulse's keyboard isn't without flaws either. It wiped all my settings during a firmware update without any warning. But honestly, apart from these minor annoyances, the utilities from Pulsar, Melgeek and even iQnix are at a point where I don't really mind using them. Some things could use some polish for sure, but you know, these are at a point where I can enjoy using these keyboards. And really all of them are good keyboards, but I have to say that I don't find myself using the Mate 68 all that often, much less than the other keyboards, and that's because of how it sounds. Its build quality really leaves nothing to be desired. It has a solid aluminum case and carbon fiber accents on the side, but it just doesn't sound as good as it looks. It's a somewhat thin and high-pitched sound, which is a bad fit for a keyboard that comes in at roughly $200. The PCMK is the most affordable keyboard of the bunch, and it only has a metal top frame with the rest being plastic, but it sounds decent out of the box. The sound profile is nothing to write home about, but it sounds clean and unobtrusive. And between the Wooting ADHE and the iQnix EZ80, it's very subjective. I like the sound of the ADHE a bit more, but both are good sounding keyboards really. You know, it's no shocker that there are other Hall effect keyboards than Wooting that sound good and have a good build quality. That never really was Wooting's specialty to begin with, and other brands have been making high-quality Hall effect keyboards for a while now. High-quality keyboard hardware, that is. Software and performance metrics weren't really their strong suit. But now we have Hall effect keyboards like these that are matching or even beating Wooting on performance, and their utilities are getting better every day too. As much as I like my ADHE, the gap is closing. Thanks for watching, bis zum nächsten Video.